Let me repeat, around $100 billion. That's over the next 4 or 5 years for anyone who wants to play in that game. This business is just growing larger and larger and larger. There's no slowdown or shift coming.
40% of that goes to NVIDIA.
Yeah.
And yet NVIDIA is acting as if it's done, as if it's kaput, David. Kaput. And I think that's wrong. And a lot of it is because of the chart. A lot of it is they're going to have zero dark 30 options on it soon. And the zero options. And what I find really repulsive about this is that people say until it retests the $90 level where it traded on yen carry day,
yes,
it can't go anywhere. Larry Williams, who's the foremost market historian, says it can't go anywhere until October. So, but be aware that the check goes to NVIDIA, somewhat to Johnson Controls, somewhat to Eaton, somewhat to Vertiv, but NVIDIA gets the big check. And yet it doesn't matter for the stock.
But again, to the number that he was talking about, $100 billion, that's going to be spent by only a handful of companies.
Well,
it's Microsoft, it's Amazon, it's Meta, and it's Alphabet.
Right. That's it.
That's it.
And that is, I think it's perfectly realistic to expect that there could be 4 companies that are in this business. Remember Network TV,
as
David?
Pointed
ABC,
out,
NBC, CBS, and Fox.
Apple is
Remember
not.
that?
Yes, I do. Apple is not spending that. They're the free rider here.
They are the great free rider, and who knows if they're even done. What happens if they announce a deal with another one of these companies? By the way, Gemini and Google were very, they did not bring home the bacon, so to speak, when I used them.
No.
Only the ChatGPT $20 a month version.
No, Jim is testing out all of the large language models, all the generative AI.
David, they are so apologetic when they screw up. It's incredible.
Listen, it's a good thing that they aren't there yet.
I wish I had been as unapologetic earlier in my life.
Soon enough, we're going to be replaced. Let's head to a break.
Really?
Yeah, we're going to have a break.
Is our agent okay with it?
Well, we have contracts, but then we're done. We're going to be replaced by
I told you, Jensen
humanoid,
me.
AI, robot, whatever.
Jensen had me. I was even an Eagles fan.
Yeah.
You say there's no AI bubble, at least compared to the last, big tech bubble. You made a couple comparisons in 2000, 52 times forward earnings. Right now, 24 times net income margin, 16%, 28% now. Where do you find, though, when do you say, okay, for the present moment, when do they become cheap for you, that folks who are not in them maybe start to build a position?
Yeah, I think that if you need to have a list of companies that you want to own for the long term. So if you look at NVIDIA is 25% off its 52-week high. So Charles, to put that valuation in perspective, it's trading at a forward PE north of 36 times. They are the biggest, the best chip maker in the world, making the most advanced chips. They're trading at a cheaper valuation than Chipotle making burritos.
All right. So I'm glad you brought up NVIDIA because obviously it's at the epicenter, right? It's the eye of the storm. NVIDIA sets the pace. Here's the thing, though. Just recently, a lot of well-known billionaire investors have sold. Ken Griffin sold a ton, 9 million shares. David Tepper sold 3 million shares. Druckenmiller sold 1.5 million shares. Steve Cohen. I mean, these are the biggest, smartest folks out there. And sort of on Wall Street, the narrative is that NVIDIA is now the dumb money play. What would you say to that?
Well, I think it would be interesting to know what percentage of their portfolios they had in NVIDIA. So are they just trimming profits and taking some profits there? I think the Oracle story and the bounce we've seen in Oracle is really interesting. So you've had the hyperscalers, you've had the NVIDIAs, picks and shovels. Software has struggled. What we've seen with Oracle's report last night and then the bounce is this partnership with AWS. What they're saying is that for the customer, it doesn't matter who they're choosing as a hyperscaler. They can continue to run the Oracle platform and software in the background. You've seen a really strong revenue pipeline. So I think that's just another affirmation that the AI story is still in early to middle innings.
Yeah. I think it's also great, to be honest with you, that it's broadening out beyond picks and shovels as well. And knock on wood, I do have subscribers in Oracle.
My next guest says, regardless, just go with the obvious one. He remains bullish on NVIDIA. a stock which he says still has massive potential. Joining us now is John Porter. He's Chief Investment Officer at Newton Investment Management. John, it's a chip company, and they go through cycles. And the argument I think comes down to whether you think NVIDIA will experience one of the many pullbacks the industry often sees or not. If it can, and this was the argument Chris Grisanti made the other day, that it can kind of avoid some of those kind of historical cyclical challenges the industry has been through.
Yeah, it's a fair question, Kelly, and there certainly are some cyclical headwinds to be mindful of. I mean, right now, if you look outside of AI within the semiconductor space, there's a lot of cyclical headwinds. But sometimes it pays to sort of step back and see the forest for the trees. As investors, we often make stories more complicated than we need to. And sometimes we just need to focus on the simple, straightforward story. And in NVIDIA's case, I look at what's going on around AI. You listen to the comments last night from Oracle and many others. I absolutely am in the camp that AI is transformational technology. Yes, there's questions about the use cases that it'll take some time to evolve, but this is going to be transformational technology. You need to invest in infrastructure. NVIDIA is clearly the most important, the best positioned company as part of that infrastructure rollout to enable AI. And when I look at NVIDIA today, it's trading at 30 times the next 12 months earnings. This is not a bubble stock. You would think it is as often as it's talked about.
Right.
But at 30 times earnings, that's not a bubble. Look at mutual fund holdings, it's one of the largest underweights out there. I just think that the risk reward is very attractive in NVIDIA today, despite all of the hype and attention it's gotten over the last couple of years.
That's interesting. It's underweight in the mutual fund community because maybe that's the only community. I just wanted to mention the market cap thing again, because go back to when it was a $3 trillion company, you could have looked at the shares and said they could double from here, but is it really going to be a $6 trillion name? It's $2.6 trillion still. So a lot of investors who said, well, I don't want to stick around for a 10 or 20% gain when I might have a 40% downside. I want to be here for the double. Can this company be a $5 trillion market cap?
It's hard to say. I wouldn't rule anything out. I think that's a very fair question, Kelly. But a year or so ago, when it was $1 billion and a half, the same question was being asked, and here we are with a stock that's up, somewhere on the order of 125, 130% year to date, and still only 30 times earnings. That's what I would focus on. I think the understanding the earnings power of this stock is a very complex task. It's one of the challenges of focusing on these open-ended growth stories. It's really difficult to imagine what the revenue potential and earnings potential is for this company 2 or 3 years from now. But I'm confident that the earnings power in a couple of years is much higher than today. Yeah. I was taught at the beginning of my career, stock prices follow earnings. I think this stock is going to go up from here.
Well, I find it weirdly encouraging, their buyback announcement a couple of weeks ago, because you think, okay, well, there's one way to grow the share price without necessarily increasing market cap. But I know that's not what people really want to hear. Stay right there. Speaking of what people want to hear, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is scheduled to speak at a major conference tomorrow. Seema Modi is here to show us what investors are hoping to hear from him. Seema, I don't know if it's buybacks, but...
Yeah, or more growth. I mean, we're counting down to Jensen Huang speaking at Goldman Sachs' Communacopia conference tomorrow in the 10 a.m. Eastern hour. The first question investors will have will be on gross margins. On the earnings call, NVIDIA indicated that gross margins would come down to accommodate NVIDIA's investment in Blackwell and future graphics processing units, but by how much? Second will be on AI spending. Morgan Stanley wrote to clients yesterday that the biggest risk NVIDIA faces is lower capital spending in response to a weakening economy. It's worth noting, though, rival AMD CEO Lisa Su addressed a similar question last night, and she says she's not seeing any change in forecasts from the hyperscalers. Lastly, AI chips are used for training algorithms, and NVIDIA is the dominant player there. But then there's the chips used to apply algorithms to the real-world applications, also known as inference. And that's where research firm SemiAnalysis says NVIDIA is facing growing competition from the likes of Google and Meta. Investors will want to know what Jensen Huang is doing to remain the leader in this space. As we look at the price action in the stock, it's basically trading flat today following some early gains, those bullish comments from Oracle CEO Larry Ellison on data centers, and it's down about 22% from its recent high. Kelly.
And Seema, there was one other point Kim Forrest made when she was on recently, pounding the table on AMD, and she said she wants NVIDIA to behave almost like we think of an Oracle, with all of these partnerships on the enterprise side and that huge sales team to kind of deliver those results, which is not something traditionally that investors who are thinking about, exciting next-gen chips really want to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to point out that NVIDIA is not just this pure play on chips, right? Is trying to be the end-to-end player and everything that a client needs inside a data center, from the stacks to the racks to the cooling technologies. They want to be the dominant player.
No, absolutely.
They are right now.
Exactly, and kind of leveraging that position. Seema, thank you. Seema Modi. John Porter, bringing you back in here. What do you want to hear from Huang tomorrow?
Well, I think it's, partnerships is something that we'd love to hear more of, because as I mentioned earlier, seeing the use cases are something that is going to drive the next leg of the story. And as you see them announcing partnerships with, leading financial services and healthcare companies, and really companies across, all corners of the economy, I think that's going to be the fuel that helps answer your earlier question about what takes us from a $3 trillion market cap to 5, 6, and 7 and beyond.
All right, I hope you're all having a great day today. The S&P finished the day up about 0.4% today, and NVIDIA finished the day up about 1.5%. I'll talk more about NVIDIA and the rest of the market in just a moment. Very briefly, though, I want to address Tesla. So Tesla finished the day up about 4.5%, which is nice to see. Tesla closed above the 50 MA on the daily time frame, which is encouraging, but we are still underneath this supply zone, which is somewhat concerning in the short term. The next thing I would like to see is a clear close above this supply zone before moving higher. I still intend to follow through with what I said in the Tesla swing trade video that I posted on Labor Day. I intend to hold this position until either the event is delayed again or until early October. And so as long as the robotaxi event is not delayed again, then I intend to remain in this trade until sometime in early October. And I still think Tesla has upside ahead, as long as the event is not delayed again, and as long as the rest of the market can simply remain calm. Speaking of the rest of the market, we have some important events this week. Of course, we have the debate tonight, which will be very important for the markets tomorrow. Also, tomorrow morning, we get CPI, and then on Thursday, we get initial jobless claims and PPI. So in the short term, I think it is reasonable to be cautious. Now let's talk about NVIDIA. So tomorrow morning, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is scheduled to speak at Goldman Sachs Technology Conference. I expect Jensen to talk about what he's seeing in the industry overall, talk more about generative AI, and perhaps he can once again calm any potential concerns that investors still have regarding Blackwell. Looking at NVIDIA's chart, I want to point out a few things. So I've recently been telling you that I'm looking for NVIDIA to trade lower and retest historic support around $90 per share at some point in the coming days. I still think this is very reasonable, but please hear me well. I'm not saying this is going to happen immediately. It may take a number of days before this happens, and we could have some green days along the way. Back when NVIDIA was trading around $140 in June, I told you I was looking for NVIDIA to re-enter the range between $98 per share and $112 per share at some point in the future, and it took some time before that ultimately came to fruition. And we did have some strong green days before it happened. With that in mind, I noticed that the direction of the histogram on the daily time frame has flipped directions and is starting to move upward. With this in mind, I think it is possible that we could see NVIDIA trade somewhat higher in the short term. It is completely possible. Ultimately, though, I would not be surprised if NVIDIA eventually retests support around $90. I want to remind you all of something I said a lot back in June and July, and I'm going to bring back this graphic that I made to illustrate this concept. Let me be clear. This is a very oversimplified graphic, and I'm simply trying to communicate the underlying concept here. I'm not saying that this graphic is pinpoint accurate. That's not at all what I'm saying. The point is that attention surrounding NVIDIA typically moves in cycles. As we're approaching NVIDIA earnings, everyone starts focusing on NVIDIA and talking about the stock nonstop. Then earnings happens as the entire market is watching NVIDIA like a hawk. Then NVIDIA remains somewhat in the spotlight for a couple weeks or so, and then market participants gradually shift their focus away from NVIDIA as they look for other opportunities in the market, and then the cycle repeats itself. Why am I bringing this up? Because after the Goldman Sachs Technology Conference tomorrow, I'm not aware of any upcoming NVIDIA events in the near term. And if this is the case and market participants start focusing on other parts of the market over the next month or so, then I think the possibility of NVIDIA trading lower and retesting historic support around $90 per share is even more likely to happen than it otherwise would be. Don't get me wrong, we can still have some strong upward surges along the way. It's happened in the past. But I still think NVIDIA is likely to retest support at some point in the coming days unless something completely unexpected and wildly positive happens first. So that is my current view on the stock. Long term, though, I am bullish on the future of NVIDIA as hyperscalers like Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, Google, and Tesla increase CapEx spending on AI by billions of dollars. These companies cannot afford to be late on AI, and they must invest in AI infrastructure now, or they will be quickly left behind by the competition. Some market participants are concerned about NVIDIA's growth rate decelerating. But as I've mentioned in many recent videos, the deceleration in NVIDIA's growth rate this quarter was largely due to the delay in Blackwell. With this in mind, I think it is reasonable that we could see NVIDIA's growth rate reaccelerate at some point in the future once Blackwell is shipping in volume. In the short term, anything could happen. Long term, though, I am bullish on the future of NVIDIA, and I think the company still has brighter days ahead. With all of that being said, I hope you're doing well, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.